The Musée de l'Orangerie, built as a hothouse for oranges and lemons, holds one of the most extraordinary works that has ever been made. These rooms are the Sistine Chapel of Impressionism, and these are Claude Monet's Water Lilies. I've come here again and again, and I've been moved to tears almost every time. No artist had ever attempted to capture the rippling, heartbreaking evanescence of life like this, and no one has come close ever since. It's a 360-degree immersion into the glittering waterscape of a different and a better world. Claude Monet was born in Paris in 1840. His father wanted him to go into the family grocery business, but it wasn't for Monet.
He spent a lot of time out of doors, which is what fueled his passion for nature. And he was a brilliant caricaturist, and he was always, as a young age, drawing people.
Monet was a rebel right from the start, a man destined to change French painting forever. Using new, industrially made, easy-to-carry paints, he developed a fresh way of painting outside, trying to snatch fast-changing light and colour. Like an athlete against the clock, he worked with a frantic urgency, desperate to catch a moment before it vanished forever.
He would go out to the riverbank, set up and begin capturing very quickly the scene that he saw in front of him, catching the interplay between light and shadow, capturing how the light changed and getting this very immediate image.
He was concerned with visual sensation, something that is almost an emotional response to a scene.
But this style of painting ran counter to the art establishment around him.
You see the type of painting that was in fashion, very grand, serious, that today we dismiss as bordering on the sentimental.
Painters were still doing mythological scenes or doing scenes from the Bible or from French national history, Joan of Arc, for example. And there was an appeal for painters to paint modern life. Monet really was the one who maybe took it to the next level.
In 1874, Monet and a like-minded group of hairy young radicals had their first exhibition to showcase this new artistic movement.
Monet's contribution was a beautiful painting entitled Impression: Sunrise.
It was a dawn scene of fishing boats in the harbor, and he did it very quickly, probably painted it in the course of a morning or even less than that.
It does just give a suggestion of what's happening. The shadow of the boats on the water, so different from everything that had gone before.
But unfortunately for Monet, who was struggling to provide for his young family, the reviews of the exhibition were utterly damning.
Most people thought they were sketches made in preparation for something that was going to come after.
There is shock, surprise, hostility.
The critics said, do not go and see this work. It's the work of madmen. It's bad for your health. There was a health warning.
One also said they are impressionists in that they do not reproduce a landscape, but convey the impression it makes.
That is what gives birth to the name Impressionism. It wasn't a name that they chose themselves. It was a name that a critic gave them.
And yet in these early works, with their immediacy, their freshness, you can see the stirrings of what was to come. His art might hover over the calm tranquility of nature, an art of gardens, rivers and meadows, but as Monet fought to make it, he was an increasingly tormented figure.
He would physically attack his canvas. He would take a penknife and slash it. He would stamp up and down on his canvases. He would put his foot through it. And he would also set fire to them. People would arrive and witness a kind of bonfire of the canvases as all of the work that he'd been doing for the past day or two went up in smoke.
When you think about it, these are a very strange proposition for a war memorial. Most countries get great granite columns or stone arches or heroic soldiers done in bronze. And France, what does France get from Monet? France gets some reflections and aquatic plants. But what Monet, in his wisdom, realized was that grief-stricken, harried, anxious people needed a contemplative, even a philosophical experience. These colossal canvases were meant to speak to the spirit of a nation ripped apart by the most brutal conflict the world had yet seen. But rather than hand them over at the moment they might be needed most, Monet couldn't quite let them go.
Monet never felt that he'd finished his paintings, these grandes décorations that he called them. He always felt he needed to do more. He needed to add a bit of paint here, a leaf there, a petal here.
Monet was a perfectionist, and I don't think he was ever happy with any of his paintings. I think he always felt they could be better. One of the wonderful quotes he has is when he wrote to Clemenceau and said, "When I am dead, I shall find their imperfections more bearable." While alive, he could never accept them, and he could never accept that this was everything that he could do.
8 years after the end of the war, on the 5th of December 1926, Monet died, aged 86. For his last moments, Clemenceau, the radical, patriotic politician who'd become his closest friend, was at his side. And on the day he was buried, a mist descended over Giverny.
As one journalist said, Normandy became a Monet painting, almost as if the elements themselves were paying tribute to the artist who had captured them so beautifully for the rest of the world to see.
Shortly afterwards, his vast panels were transported from Giverny to the Musée de l'Orangerie in Paris, where they were installed exactly as Monet had prescribed. There was nothing like them anywhere. The shape of the two oval rooms meant those who visited would have no sense of where the cycle of canvases began or ended.
He'd very carefully decided which ones he wanted alongside each other, adjacent, juxtaposed and all in the gallery. They are exactly as he would have arranged them.
We get to see, when we go into those two rooms, an art exhibition curated by Monet himself. These were the paintings that he hand-picked.
He wanted people to be surrounded by them, which meant they had to be displayed in a panorama.
What we would describe today as an installation that would be immersive.
What Monet had imagined was a way for the viewer to escape into his world. Monet made these pictures so big for a purpose. They surround you, they envelop you. And because they're so big, you can't simply concentrate on one part of one picture for very long. Your eye is caught endlessly by the next thing. And as you let yourself be surrounded and enveloped by these pictures, you get a sense of timelessness, of endlessness. But as you get lost in the cycle of life, it's almost as if a pattern begins to emerge. After a while, you realize that what's happening as one bit of one picture fades into another bit of another picture, as one color bleeds into another color, every color is changing and morphing and rippling around you, and you realize after a while that these are perhaps the world's only really successful paintings of time moving.
The physical dimensions are really significant. The way in which you walk into an entire architectural space and feel as if you are standing there on the edge of the pond, looking across this surface.
Monet's great installation would finally open to the public in May 1927. But the big question remained, would the world be ready for these paintings?